come with this proper tea. You may want to lower this because I'm quite a small person. Okay, there's refreshments. We call.
All right, you're already live, Rob.
Okay. So welcome to our weekly shiur in the Haftorah. We're studying today Menachem Bet, the specific Haftorah, as you have in this work page. If you have it, you have it. If you don't, I didn't make enough copies, apparently.
Rabbi, which chapter?
Chapter Kings 2, chapter 4. You can peek on today's page as well at the same time. In fact, I'll be nice.
Oh, here. No, I took a picture, so you can have it.
Have it, sir. So, usually, what we try to do in our study is study the Haftorah, analyze it, understand it, what it means to us today, and can we or not draw a parallel to an item, a segment, a matter in the portion of the week. So the topic today is miracles in the Tanakh, as you see it on top of your work page, miracles in the Tanakh. And certainly we saw miracles in the portion of the week. Give me one miracle.
The fire with Avram.
The what of Avram?
The fire with Avram.
The miraculous appearance of God in the Brit Ben Abtalim with the fire and the smoke. That's one. Mr. Hirsch. The birth of Yitzchak against all the laws of nature as a whole. Sarah being 90 years old and Avram being 100 years old. Then we welcome Avraham into our shiur. Third, Mr. Ezra Eidenbaum.
Yitzchak, where he was able to get a rainbow form.
Okay, the actual saving of Yitzchak by the angel. Yeah, and one more.
Generally, the destruction of Sodom.
Destruction of Sodom, all coming down from heaven. And now let's read about Elisha the prophet. Many of you know Elisha is the chief Talmid of Eliyahu Navi. Eliyahu Navi, some of you know, we're living several generations into Temple number 1. Unfortunately, the Jewish people are already divided. Okay, we have the house of Ephraim, the house of Israel, the northern tribe living in the Shomron and further north. And we have the house of David, meaning the house of Yehuda in Yerushalayim and going south. No, there's no unity, unfortunately. And yes, we have a lot of difficulties. We are in the wake of Achav, who was the worst king. He imported idolatry from Lebanon, just like he imported his wife. Izebel is her name, and there's a lot of idolatry. Some of you remember a great showdown. Yes, a great showdown
His fake prophet
that Eliyahu Navi did after he succumbed to God's request, after economic havoc hit the Jewish people, and Achav could not pay his civil servants, and there's not even food for the cavalry. And he made a great showdown on top of Mount Carmel against the false prophets. But all that is a basic prelude to what we want to study now. I want everyone to please open up, and I want to go. Is it referring to what about to say?
Yeah, you were saying what it was called Phoenicia back then, right?
Who is Phoenicia?
Lebanon.
Lebanon. Okay. That's where Achab's wife was imported from, a Canaanite entity. So please, let's begin reading. V'isha achat minashei bnei Anavim tza'aka el Elisha lemor. There's a woman, and she happens to be a wife of one of the prophets, and she's crying out. She's in a very big distress, and she's saying the following, and this will tell you what's happening here socially, economically, and not less morally. Avdecha ishime, your servant, meaning my husband, he died. Ve'ata yadata, and you knew. Ki avdecha, your servant, meaning my husband, haya yarei et Hashem. There are not a lot of expressions in the Tanakh that describe the fear of great Jews. Here, our sages tell us we're talking about a prophet called Ovadiah. Is there a sefer in the book of prophets called Ovadiah? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Ovadiah.
It's the shortest one.
Right? And some say that perhaps he was from Esav. He was a Ger Tzedek and he became a prophet. That's one understanding in Chazal. And he, during the time of Eliyahu Navi, was in the palace. He was a minister for Achab's administration. And as some of you know, Achab's wife put a POB. Is that what we use? The cops put on a
APB.
APB, thank you. I knew there was a PB somewhere.
What?
Put an all points bulletin, meaning who's wanted? The prophets of Israel.
Oh, the one them all
She
dead.
wants to eradicate, exactly. She wants
She
to wipe
doesn't
out
want
all the
God
prophets.
fearing.
And he, Ovadiah, is a God-fearing person inside the administration of Achav. And he knows about 100 prophets, and he wants to keep them alive. And they're hiding. They're hiding in caves on the other side of the Jordan River, and he wants to provide food. I can imagine, like you can imagine, that his grocery bill is running into the tens of thousands of shekels, if not even more.
As everyone else.
Where does he get the
including
capital?
kings.
Where does he get the capital for that? So he goes to creditors. He goes to who we see here are loan sharks. Why do I call them loan sharks? You will all know that there's no allowance according to the Torah to give a loan with interest. Not only is there not an allowance, but when she, the widow, cannot pay back, look what she says at the latter half of verse 1. Vanoshe, the creditor, but came knocking on the door. Lakachet et shnei yeladai. He came to take my 2 sons away. Lo lavadim. You understand what's happening here? These loan sharks are ready to use violence, that if payment is not made, they're willing to take, and they're threatening to take the loaners' children away. What does this show you about the moral level of what's going on here? Very low. Terrible violence, prohibitions are being violated, and that's abducting children. What is that called? Kidnapping children for the lack of payment. So, and by the way, stealing a kid is payable by what punishment? Where is that stated?
Right, 22.
Well, I just can't imagine it happening any other way. If someone steals your child,
Lo tignov
No,
appears
I
where?
come to your house and break your knees.
Shmot in Yitro. What's the famous event?
The Ten
The
Commandments?
10 Commandments, not the movie, the event. The 10 Commandments. And
It's a movie
each
called
of
The
the
10
lavim, the
Commandments.
negative commandments that appear there, are punishable, the Talmud says, by
Death.
death. So what is lo tignov? It's not stealing your pad. Lo tignov there, not stealing, is kidnapping. Stealing a person. That's what the Talmud says.
So if you steal a book, you don't get punishable by death, is what it's saying?
Absolutely. That's payable by double, right?
Mhm.
Payable by double. So this is the predicament that we're opening up with here. And she's screaming out. And Elisha is hearing. Let's see the reaction, please. Pasuk bet. Verse 2. Vayomer ele Elisha, he says to her, Ma salach, what can I do for you? Hagidili, tell me. Ma ishlach babayit? What do you have in your house? Obviously, she's poor. She can't pay up even loans. Vatomer, and she replies, Ein li shefchatcha chol babayit. I don't have anything. Ki rather, im asuch shamen. I have some, I have a little oil, to smooth my skin, some oil. That's all I have. Impoverished. Look at the response of Elisha, Pasuk Gimel. Vayomer, he says to her, politely, of course. Lechi, go ahead. Shalilach kelim en achutz. Go to your neighbors and borrow vessels, pitchers, jugs. Mekol shchenaich, from all your neighbors. Try to follow the Hebrew so you can get onto your knowledge of Tanakh in Hebrew as well. Kelim rekim, but make sure they're empty vessels. Al tamiti, don't take as few as possible. Take as many as possible. Pasuk Dalet, what's next stage? Verse 4. Uvat, then come v'sagarta delet ba'adeh. Close your door. I want modesty. I want things to be shushu. Uvat banach, the door should be closed ba'adeh, and in front of your sons, or behind your sons. V'yatzakt al kol ha'kelim eila. I want you to pour from the small amount of oil you have into these empty jugs, pitchers, vessels. V'amalei tasi, and when you fill one up, move it aside. Pasuk K, these are the orders or instructions from a prophet. Okay.
So he's trying to pull an Eliyahu move here, like what he did to Yonah, where he said, oh, when Eliyahu went to that widow who had one son. I'm not sure how old he was at that time, but she only had like one thing of bread and like one thing of oil. But he
Very
said,
simple.
"Oh, just be infinity all the time."
Let's see the
Is he
parallel.
trying to pull that move right here?
Let's see the parallel. And why is a miracle going to be performed this way? Good point. Pasuk 5. Hey. Vatelech meitotov. She leaves him. Vatizgor adelet. She does close the door. Ba'adel v'adbonea. Hem, and the sons are working with her. Hem magishim ela. They're serving her. Vihi motzaket, and she continues pouring. And I'm adding, she continues pouring. And she continues pouring, even though she started with
A little.
20 cc. And now she has tens upon tens of imagining of liters. Pasuk Va, verse 6. Vayikim lota kilim, when she fills up all the kilim. Vatomer el bena, she tells her son.
Is it pasuk or chapter?
Verse 6 of chapter 4 of Kings 2. Kings 2. Okay. It's good to have the Tanakh that Joshua has the edition, the current edition. It's much easier to follow. Hagisha Elai Od Kelly. He tells her sons, would you please provide me some more vessels? Vayomer, the son says, Ain Od Kelly. There's no more. No more. Vayamor Hashamen, and that's it. That is the end of the oil supply. Of course, the idea of Elisha is what to do with the supply.
So,
Sell it and
Make
pay
money.
back the loan. Excellent. Pasuk Zayin, verse 7, Vatavoshi comes, Vataged le'isha Elokim. A famous term used in the Tanakh, a man of God, a man who has close connection to God, namely prophecy. She goes and speaks to Elisha. Vayomer, and he says to her, after she reports, Lechi mechriyat Hashem, go ahead and sell it. V'shalmi et nishaychi, and pay your creditor. V'at uvanaychi, and you and your sons, sounds very dramatic, Tichi banotar, you'll live, meaning you'll be supported with the leftovers. In other words, he knows or understands that the quantity of oil that she has and the ability of the purchase price that she can sell on the market, not only will pay back the loan and whatever interest is involved, but she'll have a source of income for her future expenditures. Amazing. This is the end of this episode, even though we continue with another episode. A few questions that we must touch upon. It's obvious that the setting here is that the grasp of life that we're watching here is corrupt. Terrible. Not only between man and God, ben adam lamakom, but of course ben adam lachaverah, between man and his fellow Jew. Loans with interest, threats of violence, kidnapping, money, children. This is what people are interested in, and therefore people are willing to boost their economic power based on the suffering of others. That's what we're dealing with. That's a terrible situation. If I stop here and ask you, can you draw a parallel to the portion of the week right away, quickly? Who can give me an answer or parallel?
The parallels with Sodom.
Excellent. Sodom and Gomorrah. They're willing to use violence and power to overcome the weak and exploit the weak as long as they grow in their monetary matters. That is point number one. I'll get to your question in a moment, please. Number two, is there symbolic understanding that this miracle is going to be done through shemen? Shemen, of course, means oil. In Judaism, in Yahadut, in the Tanakh, what do we find shemen symbolic of, Malti? What do you remember? The menorah. So it's symbolic of wisdom. It's symbolic of nobility.
Essence.
What?
Essence.
Essence. It's symbolic maybe even of royalty,
I would say purity.
purity. My dear friends, the loan shark here is no one but the king, Yehoram. Yehoram is the son of Achav, who was the worst king. And it seems that he, Yehoram, is going in his father's direction and way of life.
So this is before he dies?
Could be.
Does the woman have a name?
No, her name is not mentioned here. But she is the wife of Ovadia, according to Chazal.
Okay.
My dear friends, maybe the segment in the Tanakh is coming to help us clarify, as I learned from one of my rabbis, Rav Kashtiel, what is the role of a kingdom in Israel? What is the role of a prophet in Israel? Ovadia worked secretly under the administration of Achav and supported hungry prophets. Not only did he support, but when he had no money, he went and took a loan, a lot of loans. And he knows that what is money if not to exalt and uplift society? And that's what he tried to do, okay, by providing welfare to the prophets. And now, what do we see? The kingdom thereafter, Achav, is in slumber, is lowering itself, is depleting itself of values. The king is going ahead and directing his power and violence against this widow, this weak widow who has no money, and threatening to take the kids and use them as slave labor. So this passage is very full of principle. It has to be clarified. What is the role of a king? And what can a prophet do if he has the ability to do so? A third point I want to mention is the following. Miracles. Notice how miracles are made here. All of you mention parallel things or miracles that happen in the Parsha. If I ask you, who performed the miracles in the Parsha?
Hashem.
Hashem. And who's performing the miracle here?
Hashem.
The prophet. The prophet. We'll see now in the next section as well. We see here, we have a very active prophet here in society, like his teacher Eliyahu, but even he more, that he's performing miracles for individuals. All of the miracles you mentioned in the Parsha are relative to segments of the population, forerunners of the nation, and matters. But when we learn Menachem chapter, Menachem part 2, we start learning about many, many miracles performed on behalf of individuals. That's a shift. That's a change, because the needs in society are growing because of the crooked welfare that's happening here in this area. Mr. Hirsch, you'd like to ask a question?
So, is it asur for a Jew to charge interest to another Jew?
That's exactly what it says in Vayeira chapter 19.
In the Mishnah from Rosh Hashanah is that if you charge or give back interest, you're
Invalid to become a dim. And here it's even talking about rabbinical violations and not Torah violations. Check out the Mishnah.
Are you allowed to give your creditor, if you receive credit and you pay it back, are you allowed to give them a gift as a thank you for giving you
So
that
there's a
loan?
problem with that, because it appears as if you're paying back beyond the principal, and that could be a rabbinical problem of interest.
Mm-hmm.
There are even people that are makpid, are strict after completing a loan. They don't want to say even thank you to the lender. You want to give him spiritual benefit. So what should you say instead of say thanks? Say tizkele mitzvot, you merit to do mitzvot, but not say thank you. I know you want to be very proper, but so we can say tizkele mitzvot. That's the subject. Yes, sir?
So, given that it is asur for a Jew to charge another Jew interest, and there's probably other things halachically regarding money in banks, how do the banks in Israel operate? Is it a diverse manner of operation?
That's a long subject
more
based on the
money
Talmud,
banks
my
versus
friend. A
banks?
long subject based on the Talmud, my friend, where monies are considered partly deposits, partly loans, and the interest that's used is on the. It's a long subject. It's created already in the Talmud. It's a legal loophole created by Chazal. Heter iska, right? It's called heter iska b'v metzia.
legal.
It's
So
a
are there
legal
different
matter,
kinds of
a
banks?
legal loophole created by Chazal that we don't have. We'll need a few hours to study that.
So are there like different kinds of banks? And there's like Iloni banks.
All
Hasid
the banks in Israel use this halachic matter. When I took out a mortgage to build a house, so it was we all know that all the banks of Israel have this. Good question. Let's now.
So
Yes.
what about tips? I always have a problem with tips, because at the
What's-
same time,
I'm stopping right now, even though he's a lovely young man, and I like him. We're not dealing here with the laws of lending. We're going back to Tanakh. Be happy to
I have a
answer your question afterwards.
So you said the shift from miracles that were affecting a large number of people.
To hear
There was a
to
shift
individuals.
to individual prophecy, reflecting a societal shift. Could you
Right.
explain that?
In other words, society is becoming more and more crooked, and there are people that are in greater stress. And here we see the greatness of some of the prophets, like Eliyahu, like Elisha, that they show up on the place to help those that are in a situation of stress and difficulty economically and spiritually, and they're providing needs in an amazing way, like we're going to see right now in the next section. In the next section, let's go now, and we're going to meet for the first time the secretary, the servant of Elisha, called Gehazi. Let's meet up with him right now, gentlemen. Pasuk Chet, verse 8. Let's now go and learn further about Elisha. He's the prophet that does miracles by the quantity, he does tremendous chesed, tremendous rachamim. He's much more different than Eliyahu. We meet up with Eliyahu, he's din. He's off in judgment because he's known for the great oath that he took. He wanted to paralyze Achav and his administration because of the rampant idolatry. And he made an oath in God's name that there not be tal umatar, there not be rain nor dew. And God went with him. Like the Talmud says, Tzaddik gozer, v'akadosh baruch hu mekayem. There are times that a righteous person may make a decree, and God backs him up, fulfills, maintains the promise. That's what Eliyahu did. He brought economic havoc to the entire country, all to get Achav on his knees to beg, I'll stop all this nonsense, this spiritual, terrible nonsense. So Eliyahu is known as a man of din, a man of judgment, whereas disciple is a man of chesed, a man of rachamim. Here we see another case. Pasuk Chet, Vayayom, the day was, try to follow the Hebrew, verse 8 of chapter 4. Vayavor Elisha el Shunem. Shunem is some sort of town in the Afula area. Is anyone aware of that area? The Jezreel Valley.
He's born there.
That's right. Hirsch was born in Afula.
I was there for
The
a little
Jezreel
bit.
Valley. It's one of the most it's one of the most flat and fertile areas of the country.
Fertile.
Many kibbutzim were developed there in the 1910s and 20s. Okay,
Wasn't
2
that the
decades prior to the coming of the state. There's a big mountain just south of the Afula Emek Jezreel Valley, called a very famous mountain. Some of you know it, called the Gilboa Mountain. Gilboa. There we learned in the book of Samuel about the unfortunate fall of King Saul and his great son called Yonatan in the war against the Plishtim. Mount Gilboa. When you travel to Tiberias before Beit Shan and you're traveling, you see a very tall mountain to your left as you're traveling going north. You see a gigantic mountain. That is the Gilboa mountain range, one of the most fertile areas. We take our kids hiking, and there are a lot of springs in that area. And they just opened a beautiful new spring. We went with our families, our kids and grandkids. It's now called the Valley of Springs. There's so many springs there, so many water sources there. It's really lovely. It's really fun. A lot of shady areas as well. So there, in the under the Gilboa is the area towards Afula, towards the area Shunem. Elisha travels north. Visham Isha Gedola. No, she's not 6'2", 250. That doesn't mean a large woman, meaning she's an important woman. Gadol, right? What's the name of that Mediterranean Sea in the Tanakh? What is it called? Is it really that big?
The Great Sea.
No, it's because it's next to Israel.
That's right. Since it's adjacent to the land of Israel, anything that's related to the Jewish people is Gadol. Gadol in what? Importance, in value, in holiness. So too here. Here's a very holy woman. And what is she doing with this prophet? When he's traveling through the town, would you please come in? I'll give you breakfast. I'll provide you lunch. She is looking to do a great act of kindness, support. I don't know if there was a local grocery, or I don't know if he has a Tom Sawyer bag on his back, and he's carrying some food supplies from his wife and others, but she wants the mitzvah of hosting the prophet. It's a very big thing. Vayimi de Avro, whenever he passes, Shama lecho lechem, she's providing. So it's clear that she is cognizant of the value of a prophet, how important it is, and what a great value would be to support, to be benevolent to him. Pasuk 10, verse 9. By the way, what does it really mean? I mean, I like one of the scholars that lives in my little town.
So anything to...
And we often, I like to bring him gratuities. I like to, my wife bakes chalot for Shabbat. I enjoy bringing to their family something because I would like to be connected to a great scholar, because through him, God's presence is being revealed, at least intellectually through Torah. Even more so, a Navi. A Navi is like, he's like the address of the divine presence. He's like the residence of the divine presence, because God speaks to a Navi. So obviously we can understand and identify with a person, in this case, this woman, that would like to support a prophet, because a prophet is the source of blessing, the source of divine communication. It's a wonderful, wouldn't it be nice to have, to have a prophet as your friend? I mean, would it be wonderful? So that's what she wants to do. Okay? So you can understand her pnimiyut is a very large pnimiyut. Let's go on. Vatomer el Isha. Follow verse 9. She says to her, oh, by the way, Isha, do you see what's written in that hay? Do you see what I see? In verse 9?
Dot.
Yes, you found it. Vatomer el Isha. Again, I'm reading in verse 9, the third word. Is that just a drop of ink in the wrong place? Inside the letter hey? Isha. By the way, properly reading the Tanakh, you will announce the hey, Isha. They're starting to do it better than me, but Isha. What does it mean? Malti, what does Isha mean?
Her ish. Her husband.
Ha'ish Shala. Very nice. Did you hear that? Very nice, Shua. Ha'ish Shala. Her man, her husband. I know it says Isha, and you think it means wife, but it doesn't mean wife. It means Ha'ish Shala. So she speaks to her husband, who totally is anonymous in this chapter, totally strange, totally disoriented, totally disconnected. A weird situation. Hinena yadati. She says to her husband, I know. Ki ish Elokim kadosh. This man of God is holy. Over aleinu tamid. He's always passing by. He's on the 47 bus. I don't know. Always passes by her house. Stop. Nasel aliyat kirtana. Why don't we make for him a roof room? Okay. Why don't we just build him a little room so he can have a residence by us? V'nasim lo sham mita. We'll give him a bed, shulchan, kisei menorah. Whatever is needed in a little room, so he doesn't have to go into the motel or hotel. So isn't this a wonderful initiative? Well, Mr. Building Company, would you please give me a price appraisal? How much it cost me to build the second floor? Just a little room, 7 square meters. I need just a table. Right? That's what she's interested in, building a second floor.
Okay.
Pasuk Yud Aleph, verse 11. Vayayom. So she made it because he arrives to live in the room. Vayasar el aliyah veishka. There's no talking. He doesn't talk to her. We don't see a dialogue. Maybe out of modesty, he comes to the house, knocks on the door. He walks upstairs. He goes to the room and he lies down there. After being on the road, he's traveling, maybe from the Shomron and now Aful. It could be hours and hours of traveling. Pasuk Yud Bet for verse 12. He starts talking to his secretary. First time we meet up with his famed secretary for the good and for the less good. Vayomer el Gehazi Na'aro. First time Gehazi appears, he becomes a central figure in many chapters of Elisha the prophet. Kra l'shunamit, call her. She's called a Shunamit. Would you please talk to that Mrs. Yerushalmi woman? Shunamit, a woman from the town of Shunam. Vayikrala, he calls her. Vatamud lefanav, and she stands now before Gehazi. Vayomer lo. Who's talking to whom? Vayomer lo. Look at the two opening words in Yud Gimel 13. Vayomer lo. Who says to whom?
He says to his servant.
He says to his servant and not to her. He's showing tremendous modesty, tzniut, okay? And through his servant, Ezra can just move a little back so I can see her. Through his servant, does he communicate with this host? And more na'ileh, say to her, meaning politely, Hine charadet elenu. You've done so much efforts. You've done so many things on our behalf. Et kol ha'charadah, you've troubled so much to occupy yourself for building us a room and this and that. Melasot, what can we do for you? Hayesh ledaber lach el hamelech, meaning I have what's called in modern day Hebrew I have protexia. It's a new word from Russia. What is protexia?
Protection.
Meaning I have
Connections.
connections. I have connections in the government, in the political world. Maybe you need something. I can speak to the king. Who's the king? The son of Achav. Oh, El Saratzava, or maybe the minister of the army. And she says politely and modestly, look at her reply, please. Vatomer, she says, Betochami anochi Hashem. I'm with my people. I'm with the neighborhood. I'm here. I don't need to have any special treatment. I don't need any gratuities. No, I want to be with my people. Let's continue. Verse 14. Vayomer umela sotla. But what should we do for her? He asks again his servant. And Gehazi gives the inside information. Vayomer Gehazi aval. However, Bain Einla. V'isha zaken. Look at the last 5 words together with me in verse 14. Bain Einla. V'isha zaken.
Just like with Abraham.
Beautiful. Here's a parallel to the portion of the week. Mrs. I don't know what we're going to call the Shunammite woman, like Sarai Imenu, does not have a child, and her husband, like Avram Avinu, seems to be incapable of having children. Okay, was your question? Hirsch, you had a question?
So you said that anything involving the Jewish people, Eretz Israel, these things, whenever you describe, like for example, Mediterranean Sea, they say it's the Great Sea because it's great because of its
Importance and value.
Because of its proximity to the
To the land of God, to the nation of God. That's exactly right.
So both Eretz Israel
And the name Israel are important.
So it's both.
They're both centers, nucleuses of the world. That's right, in people and in the land.
So it's the importance is, since it's close to Eretz Israel, that's what's called.
That's right. That's what's called the Yom HaGadol. Gentlemen, so you see a very interesting parallel to our portion of the week. It's really sewn for this. What does happen? Pasuk 15. Tatvav. Vayomer, after now the prophet knows that she doesn't have a child. Is that interesting? He's been going there maybe time after time. He never sits down for a cup of coffee and a piece of sponge cake and talks to Mrs. Shunam. What's doing? What's your family situation? Can you show me some pictures of your kid? Nothing. Total modesty. That's such God-fearingness. He's a VIP, this prophet. He has a lot of important things to do. And he doesn't, mix. Certainly not flirting. Doesn't even converse. He shows a distance between he and she. Doesn't even speak to her. He uses his servant Gehazi to speak. Interesting. Look at the answer. Vayomer krala. I want you to call her. Vayikrala, he calls her. Vatamud bapatach. She doesn't go into the room, but rather she stands with distance at the entrance. She too is showing modesty. And now he says something. I want everyone to read Pasuk Tet Zayin before I do, verse 16, and tell me who gave him the right to say what he's announcing. Who gave him the right? In verse 16 of chapter 4 of Kings 2, who gave him the right? And now I'm reading it. Vayomer, he says, Lamoed hazeh, to this time, ka'et chaya, a year from now, at choveket bain, you are hugging a boy. Vatomer, Aladoni, please, Ish Elohim, no, the man of God, Al techazeh b'shivchatecha, don't disappoint me. We can't imagine the stress, the emotional taxation that she's gone through in life, being a barren woman. And now a prophet comes and says, you're going to have a boy next year. I don't want to be disappointed. It'll be too stressful for me. It'll be so disappointing. I won't be able to take it. Please don't. You're better off not even saying it if you can't pay the check. Are these words parallel to words that we saw in our parsha? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lamoed hazeh, mamash, almost the same words. Ka'et chaya. Who said it too?
The angel said it to
One of the
Abraham.
angels, not the angels. One angel said it too.
Abraham. Sarah.
Avram and Sarah.
Just Abraham.
Is that amazing? What?
Yeah.
And
וגם שרה לא אוהבת לשמוע את זה.
Right. Very interesting parallel. Just like Sarah thought these guys are fooling outside, stop talking about Avram's wife. What did she do? She laughed. Not out of happiness, but out of mind your own business. Here, we see also a similar type of reaction. Who gave him the right to say what he said, gentlemen?
Hashem.
It's a prophecy. But the Tanakh doesn't bother to write, quote, Vayomer Hashem El Elisha. Tanakh doesn't bother to write it. He knows, he got a prophecy. What do you want to say, Mr. Bradley?
Is it a prophecy of what Hashem's going to do, or is it an intervention of what a tzaddik is asking Hashem to do?
That's an excellent question. It seems that he has an open checkbook from God, and he's going ahead. I can't prove either or, but it seems that he's doing things out of godly powers that God gave him. Okay, it could be. That's his question. I can't prove this or that. Certainly regarding Eliyahu Navi, in the case regarding not bringing rain and water, God did not tell him to make such a decree. God is not in favor of such harsh judgment. But God went with him. Then we can use the principle that he makes a decree and God's following up with it. But here, I think it's most likely God gave him an open checkbook to perform many miracles. In this case, the tremendous distress of a woman. What do you want to say, Avram? Okay, so we discussed it. We discussed that, and sure, we said the name of the Nachmanides Ramban. She didn't know who was on the other side of the tent. She had no knowledge, absolutely, that they were Malachim. And then God says, "Oh, she better get her act together. This is a divine promise." And how does Avram know? Because God tells Avram that she left, and she left only inside herself. And when he double takes his wife and says, "You did laugh," and after she being startled, then it's clearly she realizes that her husband knows because God told him, and those people outside are not regular persons but angels. My dear friends, 9 months later, verse 17, Vatara Isha vateled ben, she's pregnant, she gives birth. La Moed is exactly the time. Isn't that amazing? Prophetic fortune. Ka'et chasha diber le Elisha. Vayigdal hayeled, the child is now a yeled. We also saw that in our parsha, that already Yitzchak was weaned from nursing, the same words. Vayayom vaytel aviv elakotim, his father is a farmer, and they're out harvesting. And now we see some sort of relationship between the son and this unknown father. He says to his father in verse 19, Vayomer el aviv, Roshi, I got a headache. Vayomer el anar, father says to the child, you don't see expression of mercy, love. What's the matter? Can I help you? Nothing. Would you take him to his mother? Shows like the father, I'm at work right now. I can't be bothered. Okay. Pasuk 20. Of course, he's carried. He can't even walk. But we don't see the pain of the father whatsoever. Notice the different reaction of the mother. The kid is brought to his mother. Vayeshev al birkeha. What does the mother do? She takes him and puts him on his lap. Adat Zoraim. For hours and hours, apparently, until noontime. Vayamot. And he dies. Sad story. The kid dies. This miraculous, the fruit of a miracle. Pasuk 21. Notice the action. Vatal, verb 1, number 1. Vatashkiveu, verb number 2. Amitat Elohim. Vatisgor bado, verb number 3. Vatetzein, verb number 4. This woman, she knows exactly what has to be done. She's a woman of activity. She leaves the baby on the bed of Ish Elokim. Just like he was a man of God and he performed a miracle to allow me to become pregnant and conceive, so too I want divine intervention, and this is part 1. Part 2, 22, verse 22. Vatikra Elisha. She calls out to her husband. Vatomer, and she says to him, Shulchan Eli achad min anarim. Why don't you send me one of the boys, one of the riders, v'chatatonot, and one of the donkeys, a quick one meaning, Ve'arutza, and I'm going to run. Adish Elokim ve'ashuv, and I'll come back. What does she not say to
That
her
her
husband?
son had passed away.
Yeah.
Doesn't involve him whatsoever. Maybe because he's an impediment to any future activities, because he's just a stam husband and he doesn't prove himself, he doesn't show interest. Isn't that interesting? It's really very unusual. Vayomer, but he does ask now, Madua tolechet elav, what are you going visiting him today? Lo chodesh. It's not that what you do once monthly on Rosh Chodesh. V'lo Shabbat. It's not that you occasionally go to him for Shabbos. Vatomer, Shalom, it's okay, don't worry. What doesn't she share with him?
The thing about her
The
son
death
still.
about the son. Pasuk of Dalet. Vatachavosh ha'aton. Who's saddling the donkey?
The attendant.
Is that what it's written in your Tanakh?
Yeah.
In mine, it's written differently.
No, she settled it on.
I see.
It said to her.
What is that? What do you understand from that?
And she's taking action.
She's determined. She could have asked.
Just like Avram when he did a kiddush.
Very good. Avram is a wealthy man, has many attendants. He could have said, Bivakashal, please lift up, check the water, oil. What else is under the hood? Water, oil, the battery level. I don't know what else. You have to check in the car.
Coolant,
The coolant is.
spark plugs.
But he doesn't do that. He does it himself. Shows determination, shows rizut, diligence, quickness. Here, she doesn't ask anyone to do it. She's going to do the action. Let's continue reading verse 24. Vatachavosh Vatomer el nara, and she speaks to the attendant. Nahad, drive. Valech, let's get going. Al tatzoli nerkov, don't stop me from riding. Ki'im amarti lach, no stop signs. Yes, go through the stop signs. No stopping whatsoever. Everything here is around the order of Mrs. Shunamit here. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's a real amazing woman. Pasuk Kafei, follow the reading if you can. Vatelech vatavo ish Elohim el Har Carmel. Okay, Har Carmel. Some of you know geographically. If we're coming from the Afula Valley,
It's near Haifa.
it's in right. And in which direction are we traveling from the Afula Valley to the Carmel Mountain? North, south, east, west, west, south, north.
West.
Southwest.
Going west. Is it southwest? I don't believe even southwest, but maybe even directly west. That's quite a ride of a few, maybe tens of kilometers. Okay. And Vayeira, Kirot ish Elokim otam mineged, from a distance, the man of God sees her, Elisha sees her, and he, of course, senses it must be something wrong. Vayomer Gechazina ro hine shunamit. Look, surprise, hine, surprise. Ata now, rutzna likrota, go run towards her. Ve'emorla, and say to her, middle of 26, Hashalom lach? Is everything okay? Hashalom lach? Question 2. Hashalom li ishech? Is your husband okay? Question 3. Hashalom layalet? Is everything okay with the son? With the boy? By the way, this son, sorry I'm breaking your suspense, you probably know it anyway, that he's revived. He later becomes, according to the Zohar, not that I study Zohar, but I've written down the name of the Zohar, Habakkuk. Habakkuk is one of the prophets. So this child becomes a prophet.
Just like Yonah.
From the word chibuk.
Embrace.
When you're going to embrace someone, to hug someone. Vatomer, and she responds, Shalom. But she wants to get to the major report. Everything's really not a-okay. Vatavo elish Elokim elahar. They meet somewhere on the mountain. And what does she do? Vatachasek b'raglav.
She falls to his feet.
She seizes his feet, doesn't allow him to move. There's no doubt that she's in distress. There's no doubt that she's excited. There's no doubt that she remembers the day that she told the prophet, don't disappoint me. Don't disappoint me. Okay? Ezra, you can go into my office. You can bring another one. It's on the table. Okay? Bevakasha. Now, what does Gehazi want to do? If you're the secretary, the student of...
He tries to kick her.
You're trying to put... Smeut, modesty. She's touching his feet. We don't do these things. Vayigash Gehazi, he approaches by himself, Lehotfa, to push her away. And what does the prophet say? Vayomer Ish Elokim, Harpela, leave her alone. Ki nafsha marala, her nefesh is mar, is bitter. Vashem helimi mei, God hid this from me, Velo Igili didn't tell me. Wow. What an educational point. Right now, there's no need to talk about tzniut, modesty, that she's touching the feet of a man. Right now, she's in pain. She's in distress. She's so hurt. Her heart is hurting her so much. This is not a time to push her away. Understand her. Try to be with her and see where she's coming from. Right now, we're talking about mentally, emotionally, thank you, saving her life. Who knows if she's going to drop dead, God forbid. She can get a nervous breakdown from this. Right now, this is not the time to get her off of me. Let's hear what's going on. Want to raise a question?
I just was curious why Elisha didn't have a sense or a hunch of what it was.
That's right. So very nice. We can understand that God doesn't want him to know. I want to raise a point that maybe will help a reply to Reuven's question. He's asking why doesn't God want him to know? Why doesn't God want him to know? What we're learning in Tanakh, often about miraculous matters, especially about Elisha, is that unlike the creation of the world in Bereshit, as Ramban Nachmanides explains, there was Yesh Me'ayin, something from nothing. There was nothing in the world. There was a beginning in the world. Yesh, that's the philosophical term. Yesh Me'ayin, ayin to the word ein. Whereas, thank you. Whereas everything thereafter is Yesh Me'yesh, something from something. God doesn't want to perform miracles with us just sitting, twiddling our thumbs, and not joining him. Hashem wants his nation of Israel, and especially his prophets, to be partners with God. Therefore, when Elisha asked the poor woman who is in front of a loan shark, do you have something in your house? In order for the miracle to happen, it has to be on the basis of something, some element, some physical matter. God wants you to be part of this beautiful blend of our divine and material world blending together, sewn together. And therefore, many miracles are based upon something where we are part of the miracle. We are partners in the miracle. There's some matter called oil that from 20 cc's turns into 20 liters, but not nothing into 20 liters. So too here, God wants some sort of effort, maybe surprise, maybe Elisha's even being tested. How will you react to this farce, to this mistake maybe, to this trial? Let's call it a trial. How are you going to react to this woman? Are you going to say, get off of me, no one touches me? Or do you tell Gehazi, get off of her? Let's hear her. You know, psychologically, when a person is in such great distress, in such great pain, the most important thing is to be ears, to listen, pay attention, hear the grief, hear the pain, hear the stress of the person. That could be 50% of healing the matter. Let him exit. Let him express what's hurting him. And maybe God is testing Elisha in his great spiritual, intellectual capacity, how he will react in this case. And how will he become partners with God? How will he react to heal the situation if he can, Bichla? What do you want to say?
Would this be unusual for a prophet to not, would it be like, hey, my television's broken, why can't I see what's going on? Or would this be something that, well, sometimes I see, sometimes I don't see? Would this be more routine?
It's obvious that God doesn't give all the prophets the ability to see everything and everything. No. Only Moshe Rabbeinu would be on such a level of knowing everything and anything because he's so connected to God.
So yeah, he missed two.
And he's a human being at the same time. Avram, what would you like to say?
It reminds me of a story.
Yes.
Story. There was an examination for these college people who were tested to be rabbis.
Yes, sir.
And so the question was, what would you do if there's a woman at stake in the sea? and they have what would we do? We have to save her. It's because nefesh. So
This
they were,
is
what can I do? How could they could touch the woman? They get out of so no, you cannot touch a woman. So they told him they asked the rabbi the results of the questions. Everybody got a nice 0 because people are nefesh don't make any haste wrong. Just get the woman out of the water.
That's
and
right.
save her.
That's right.
There was a queen, I believe, from Thailand who actually died because of a similar ideology that in their culture you do not make any physical contact with a noble woman if you're a peasant. And all the people working with her or who were with her on the boat were peasants. So when she fell in the water and she couldn't get out, they wouldn't help her.
She died because of classism.
She died because of their classism, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Gentlemen, let's go forward.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good point. Thank you for sharing. Look at the reaction. Pasuk 28, Vatomer, and she says again out of grief, but also she's in total control of herself. Hasha'alti ve'met Adoni. Did I ask from you a son? Hello, Amarti. I certainly said lo tashloti. Don't let me leave. Don't make mistakes with me on matters of this sort. Vayomer leGehazi. After hearing the pain, he tells Gehazi, Chagor motnecha, belt your loins. Kach mish anti biyadcha, take my staff with you. Valech, and get going. Ki timsa ish. If you see someone on the road, and can I have your autograph? Can you give me a bracha? No blessings. V'chi yivarecha chesed, someone to bless you. Lo tanenu, don't answer. No delays. Direct to the house of the shunam. V'samta mishanti, and put my staff. Staff apparently represents the ability to perform miracles.
Is that why Moshe had his stuff?
Very good. Through the staff, apparently there's divine power, but you have to be a prophet or a secretary of the prophet to start using it. Put it on the face of the Na'ar. Okay? So you see how much he relies on his secretary, on his attendant. Vatomer Eimana, the mother says, Chai Hashem v'chei nafshecha im ezveka. She's making an oath in God's name. Look at the formula. A formula for an oath in God's name are these two words in the middle of verse 30. Chai Hashem, or what you would say today in English, by the life of God. Mm-hmm. Here is a Shavu'ah. And what is she taking upon herself? I'm not going to leave her. I'm not going to leave you. I'm not going to leave you, the prophet. I'm not going to let myself hang out here, get on top of it, and take an aspirin and relax. I'm going to go with you. Vayakom vayelech achareh. She's going even first, and they're going after her. V'gehazi, as we're coming right now towards the end of the Haftorah. Avar lifnehem. He passes through everyone. Vayasam et hameshenet. He rides to the house. He puts the staff there. Al pnei hana'ar. Ve'en kol ve'en kashem. Of course, the Na'ar is like he's dead. There's no voice. Nothing is heard from here whatsoever. And what else does he do? Vayashav l'krato vayagelo lemor lo hikitzanar. He gives the information upon the arrival. He's not woken up. Vayvo Elisha abaita. Elisha does arrive now to the house. V'hinei, behold, the Na'ar is dead. Mushkav, lying on Elisha's bed. And here, something miraculous happens. Pasuk Lamed Gimel. As we come here towards the ending. Vayavo. Vayizgor hadelet ba'at shnehem. The door's closed. There's only the prophet and the boy. This matter of doors being closed, the same situation in the previous episode where the prophet ordered the doors to be closed.
Ilya?
God says in the book of Dvarim, quote, Yivarachacha Hashem ba'asamecha. You heard of the Osem company that produces Bamba and Bisli and all these things?
One of the biggest food companies here.
What does the word Osem mean? It means your bounty. Yivrachacha Hashem, God will bless you. The Torah says in the book of Deuteronomy, Ba'asamecha, in your bounty.
So what does Menachem
1 second,
mean?
sir. 1 second. In your bounty, the Talmud says, and I'm quoting, Ba'asamecha is also a play on words. B'davar ha samui mina ayin. The blessing will be on a matter which is
Covering your eyes.
concealed from the eye.
Oh.
The more a matter is covered concealed, not seen. It more, as the Maharal of Prague explains, belongs to the spiritual realm or spiritual world. Things that are overt, that are seen, that are exposed, they belong to the material, physical world. Blessing from God is more in contact with the spiritual world by definition. There are often unexperienced yeshiva students that come happily to me. Rabbi, my wife is pregnant. She's in this month, she's in that month. And I tell them, quote, keep it quiet. The less you talk about it, greater the chance for
Another miracle.
for a bracha, a blessing from God. You don't start publicizing on Facebook. My wife is due to give birth in 8 months from now. Keep your mouth shut. Be quiet. Keep it as a bracha. Of course, tell your in-laws, tell your parents, tell this or that. Okay?
So what about
Even
Tell Rabbi Listman.
no, not necessarily. Even our kids, right? We have 3 married girls and 2 daughters-in-law, and they don't tell us when they get the test results. They don't call up. They wait a month or 2 months or 3 months, and they give us the promising news, and we pray, like I'm praying today. One of our daughter-in-laws, B'ezrat Hashem, has to give birth already a week and a half ago, so we're waiting to find out.
How many kids do you have? Can I ask?
I'm not going to tell you in front of everyone. I want there to be a bracha. Okay? So, this is the idea for the spiritual, for these miracles to happen regarding the Shemen. Close the doors, and now here. He's about to perform what we call, in the second blessing of our Amidah, again, can you repeat that term? Mechayei Meitim. Or we call it the rebirth of the dead. Techiyat HaMeitim. Mechaye is God doing it. And that's what he does. Vayitpalel el Hashem. First, there's prayer to God. We need the spiritual world. Second, Vayal, he rises. Verse 34. Vayishkav al Yadid, lies on the child. Vayasam piv al piv, he puts his mouth on his mouth. Ve'einav al einav, his eyes on his eyes. Ve'chapav, and his hands, palm is on his hands. Vayigar alev, and he breathes. His entire body is spread on his body. Vayachon besar ayaled. Temperature, the heat of the flesh of the child comes back, and as we see, the child is living. The Malbim, one of the great later commentaries on the Chumash as well as the Tanakh, he says the following: the reason why Elisha decided to be alone in the room in order to and pray for the return of the soul, and by doing so, he lied on him to bring heat from his body to the body of the dead, in order that there be some sort of preparation, some sort of initial act of heating the body. And Elisha, when he's coming to do all these great miracles that we've been learning about in this chapter, it was the influence of the oil that the woman had. Previously, we'll learn about the healing of a Nazir. We also learned about in the Jericho waters, the healing of the waters. And we learn about the iron that rose up in the waters against nature. None of those matters. Okay, there are many, many miracles done by Elisha. We said he does a tremendous amount of miracles. None of the former ones was requiring tefillah. Okay, how did he do those miracles? By the power of his prophecy. He has power of prophecy, and he did it. Okay, not here. When he's coming to bring alive again the son of the Shunammite woman, he requires to do tefillah. We see it clearly. Vayitpalel el Hashem. It didn't happen in previous times. Why? The Masechah that deals with rain. What is the name of the Masechah, the tractate? Anyone know? You learned the Mishnayot of it? Ta'anit, the tractate of fast. In the event, God forbid, that we have a lack of rain during the winter, then Yechidim, individuals, start fasting, Yom Sheni, Chamishi Sheni, and then if it continues after a certain date, Beit Din requires the public to fast, and so on and so forth.
And
so on and
it's
so
a
forth.
holiday, you have to fast half the day.
So on and so forth. The Talmud says on the bottom of the first page, there are 3 keys in the world that God did not distribute to man. And they are rebirth of the dead,
Giving birth to kids
rain.
and rain.
What is the third, sir?
Giving birth to kids.
Yoled, right?
What?
To become pregnant and have a child. Those keys, God did not give.
Because he desires prayer.
God did not. He didn't give it to the Shaliyah. It only comes from God. What does that mean? It could be once or twice or 3 times a great tzaddik or a great prophet may be able to bring rain, may be able to do the resurrection of the dead,
Pretty sure that's-
may be able to give a bracha that the wife be able to conceive. But there must be prayer for that. There must be prayer for that. Elisha the prophet knows that Gemara. It's on page
What
2.
about earlier in this Haftorah, it doesn't say he prayed for her to get pregnant. It
Who?
just said-
Who?
Elisha here. When he told her that she would have a child. He
That's
didn't
right.
pray.
That's right. That's a good question. Maybe we're learning from here that it's written once and it's affecting and it's applicable as well. It's a good question. But still, let's ask why didn't I don't know the answer to your good question. But I just want to say the point here. 2 things are done here by the prophet. The prayer for the ability to bring back the dead and the preparation of the body to receive life through the prayer of the prophet is the need for heat to the body. So when he prayed, and he prayed for the soul, the spiritual, to come back into the body, then he went and prepared the body to receive body temperature so that the soul can go into a body which is now pumping and moving. Because if the body is expired, the soul has nothing to do there. What did you want to say, Mr. Bradley?
I had the opposite question. I think they tie together. I was wondering if perhaps the prophet had been mistaken in something, and this was Hashem's way of reminding the prophet that he needed to do something. And I'm wondering if that could then tie in with Shua's question that maybe he should have prayed in the first place. He got distracted. Sometimes it happens, and that this was God's way of reminding him, "Hey, don't. Am I too far out on the limb? Do you think?"
Look, I don't see it hinted to here in the words. It could be a midrash. I didn't see it in preparation of the shiur. I'd be very happy to learn and find out, but I'm not aware. Well, 1 second, sir. What do you want to say, Ruben?
Is it the same soul that entered the body as left the body?
Very good question. The Malbim says that it's a ruach chadash, a new spirit, probably referring to some sort of new soul. Apparently that soul went back to its storage room upstairs, and now he's bringing down a new soul. And like we said, according to the Zohar, this child receives the embracing, the hugging of the mother, and he becomes, according to his namesake, called Chabakuk, from the word chibuk, to give a hug or an embrace. Can you go over to your child and chibuk, can I get a hug? And I notice one of my daughters often uses that with her kids. Chibuk, to our 2 or 3-year-old, and they come running and hugging and embracing. So we saw these 2 matters. Yeah, I'm sorry, Avram, what did you want to add, please?
Just to compare this with the creation of first man. If God first created the home, the material, the clay and the earth, then he gave the soul. You have to get the what you call it, the tool. You have to do what you call it, the homer, the vessel. Then you can get the soul, and then you have a human being. Compared of material and spiritual.
It could be. I'm not really too much aware of these metaphysical matters. There's no doubt that we can summarize and say that many parallels we saw to the Parsha. Many miracles. We saw the contrast, the miracles in the Parsha done all by God, and the miracles done here are by the prophet himself, which is totally the opposite situation. We see that Elisha, the prophet, is a man of many, many miracles, and he's during a very difficult time where there's a lot of social, economic corruption. a lot of spiritual decay. Yet Elisha is a star. He cares for the people. He cares for them. He wants to do for them. And remember, we are not a regular, average nation. We belong to the divine. And therefore, whatever episodes God wants printed for future generations, it's reminding us that we're related to the divine, and things above nature happen to the Jewish people. For that in mind, let's, for the latter part of the shiur, open up the Chumash. I want to share with you some highlights of the great section called the Akedah. So open up there, please.
Technically, the first 5 books in the Tanakh are Chumash.
The first 5 books are Chumash. Chumash from the word Chamesh, 5 books.
So technically, we just move the page. Turn the page.
Right now, we can go back to the Chumash, to the portion of the week. And I want to share with you matters.
Rabbi, you said the 3 keys that we didn't receive were
Chaya, Yoledet, to give birth, rain, and Tchiyat
Ah.
Mitim, the resurrection of the dead, the rebirth. We ourselves decided for our first child that we thought the phenomena of the century, the generation that we're living, is the rebirth of the Jewish people. So we called our firstborn, our eldest daughter, Tichiyah, from the word resurrection or rebirth, which comes from the root Chayim.
Oh,
Tichiyah.
Vayeira.
Okay, so let's open to the Akedah.
Is Deuteronomy based on a Greek word?
No, I don't know Greek. I don't know. I'm studying
the etymology of the term.
Yes.
Okay.
They base it off of our.
Okay, the Akedah opens up here in chapter 22. The Akedah, chapter 22. Vayachar advarim
What's
ha'eleh.
the name of the chapter?
Chapter 22, Kaf Bet. In Bereshit, of course, Genesis. Vayachar advarim ha'eleh ve'elokim nisat Avraham. Vayomer lav Avram vayomer hineni. We have to deal with what's so important, that this is coming after these matters. What's so important? On a simple sense, it's happening after the former matters, after the former promise. There's a very special understanding the Rashbam, the grandson of Rashi, brings. The immediate or preceding event is Avram Avinu making a treaty with Avimelech, the king of Plishtim, and he concedes not to go to war, to take lands of the Plishtim for several generations. We call that, in modern international terms, a what? The Oslo Agreement. The Oslo Agreement, meaning agreeing to give up land to Gentiles. The Rashbam says clearly that the event of putting Avram into shape, into trial, is because he failed. Wow. He failed in signing or making an agreement and handed over 7 lambs and said, okay, we won't take care of this land. And for these seven generations passed until we were able to fight the Plishtim and take over them. So the Rashbam, who's a Pashtan, who learns Pshat, simple meaning, ties, and this is the event that happens after this matter. After which matter? The matter of giving up land that you're not supposed to do. Who are you? It doesn't belong to you, it belongs to God, it belongs to the future Jewish people, and therefore it's as if it's a punishment. My dear friends, on a very more lofty, high sense, I want to share with you the book I'm holding here is a Siddur, half of a Siddur. Why do I say half of a Siddur? The Siddur is only 3 lines on top of each page, and all this is the commentary of Rav Kook. Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook was a very noble, gigantic thinker, halachic giant, knower of Torah. In his he days, he studied 60 pages of Talmud a day in depth. Not 1, not 6, 60 pages of Talmud. He was a genius. We can imagine, with his depth and spirituality, what he was in his prayer. One great Haredi rabbi, I just forgot, Rabbi Shmuel Levitz, I think it was he, when he saw Rav Kook praying, he says, Halavai, that my Yom Kippur prayer would be like his weekday prayer. That's what he said about the tefillah of Rav Kook. Rav Kook sees this event, which will be the master event of mankind, where man is going to be tested. How much love do you have for God versus the natural love that you have for your child? And the fact that this trial, of course, is written here in the Torah, it's coming to teach us, Achar hadvarim ha'ela. Mankind has reached a level, a plateau, that it's ready, that it's mature enough to undergo this plan, this trial of God. In other words, the realm of mankind on the universal level has reached a certain level. We're finishing up 2,000 years of idolatry. Many of you know Avram Avinu was born in the year 1948. Right. Not in the Gregorian calendar, 1948 for the creation. Okay? We're finishing the first 2,000 years, as the Talmud says, of idolatry. We're now coming to a new era of 2,000 years of Torah that's starting with the faith through Avram Avinu. And therefore, the world has matured to a level where it can begin to stomach, to understand a mega event like this. That's what all of man, after all these events. Velokim Nisa. Nisa, you're all probably learning, tested. And you all quote chapter 5 of Pirkei Avot, which the number 10 appears several times. And one Mishnah states 10 what?
Shlims.
10 what, sir?
The shlims.
Nisyo, no, 10 tests. Avram Avinu was tested. This seems to be the highest, the most difficult of all the tests.
Well, there's an argument between Rosh and Rambam about what the.
One second. Nes. Elokim Nisa. Nes here doesn't have to mean miracle. Nes means when you put a flag, when you put a banner up and you wave it. Every test, and all of us sitting here have difficulties, are tested. Some annually, some monthly, and some go through tests every day. We all have difficulties and struggles. Each test is really for our benefit. Each difficulty, each struggle, its objective is to raise us up. Because if I find the intellectual or emotional powers or energies to overcome the difficulty, I'm stronger spiritually, ethically. I don't want to look at these things. I'm convincing myself not to look at these things. I passed the test. I don't want to eat those things. I convinced myself I'm a strong person.
Rabbi Newman wants to know if anybody else is learning, or is it just me?
Can you notify, what's his name? I thought you want to go, you can go now. Thank you, I have an answer. Maybe afterwards also, we'll see. Maybe there was a yahrzeit of Rabbi Shlomo Kalibach, the cemetery, that I think today's his yahrzeit, so maybe people went to the cemetery. So every test is to raise us up, this too. Elokim Nisa, the test is really for Avram's benefit, to raise him up. And of course, the answer of Avram, when God says he's being tested, God calls him out. What is the answer? Hineni.
Here I am.
He doesn't say, here I am. Not I am here. Here I am. Hineni. Meaning,
He's humbling himself.
he's humble.
So
Hineni, I'm second.
So yahrzeit is Yiddish term, and in Hebrew would be Ner Neshama.
That would be Yom HaZikaron, a Memorial Day.
Yom HaZikaron.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Maltu?
Was Hineni not in
It's not
like Haftorah?
Is Hineni Haftorah?
You read it.
Was Hineni Haftorah, gentlemen? Do you remember?
I think it's in the beginning, not?
Yeah, I think so also. Another common word. So Avram Avinu is already showing humility. Hineni, I'm ready. Doesn't matter what. That shows how much his belief is perfect and wholesome in God. And therefore he says Hineni. And now come to the commandment of God. It's as if God is playing with him. Vayomer, verse 2. Kachna, please take et bincha, your son. Excusez-moi. Which son? Et yichidcha, your special son. Oh. One is special to Sarah, one is special to Hagar. Asher Hafta, the one you love. I love both. Come on. Et Yitzchak. In other words, He's in metach, he's in suspense. Who am I being commanded to take? He doesn't specify purposely to make the trial even more difficult. V'lech lecha.
And go for yourself.
Has he heard that term?
Go for yeah, that's what was the last expression.
First communication. Vayomer Hashem el Avram lech lecha in Parshat Lech lecha. But go to Eretz HaMoriah. First time in the Torah. The land of Moriah. The land of Moriah. What's special about the land called Eretz HaMoriah? What is the root of the word HaMoriah, my dear friends? Eretz what? No. No. HaMoriah. Think of the word HaMoriah. Why is it called HaMoriah? What word do you see the root inside it?
Fear.
HaMoriah, fear, maybe something. You're right that there is a midrash that says from here, fear came down to the nations of the world. But what's even above and beyond the word Moriah? What do you call your Opan teacher? What do you call her? Mora? Mora. I didn't hear you. Mora, instruction. From there, Mount Moriah, instruction, Torah instruction will come from the world. By the way, close your eyes. The word Torah, any connection to Moriah?
Yeah, just press
Torah comes from the word Moriah. Torah is from the word instruction. Moriah is instruction. So that's meaning number 2. Meaning number 3, Moriah. More. More is one of the one of the spices of the Ketoret. Very good. We have an incense offering called the Ketoret offering, brought twice daily. It's a public offering into the inner altar, the golden altar. And more is one of the main spices. One of the main spices. Okay? Chazal even say that even after about 1,000 years after the destruction of the Mishkan in Shiloh, the scent of the Ketoret was still evident. And so too in the Beit HaMikdash, the Gemara says that the people that made Aliyah from Bavel for a holiday, even after 70 years of exile, they wanted to come up to Yerushalayim, they were able to identify where the Beit HaMikdash is based on the scent in the area. In any event, he's being sent to a place he's never been to. He's never heard the word Eretz Moriah, which from there will be the instruction of Torah. You all know the Sanhedrin. Their seat is not on Jaffa Street. The seat of the Sanhedrin will be where? Har HaMoriah, Lishkat HaGazit. So that's a very central place. But God doesn't give him the place. On one of the mountains, Al Echad Harim. What does this show about the difficulty of the test?
It's even harder.
It's even harder. It's just like Lech Lecha. God doesn't particularly tell him. He's going to have to examine, inquire, find out, wait for a further prophecy. So we see a great parallel to the difficulty of coming to Eretz Yisrael. What do you want to say, Avram?
The name of Mordechai.
More. Very nice. More. Let's go on.
It's like making Aliyah and say, well, where are you going? God's going to show me where I'm going.
You tell that to the Jewish agents that you're going to be in trouble. I'm sure you told the Jewish agency office exactly where, right? You're going to Herzliya, in fact, right? Then you changed the course. But you had to tell them, right?
Yeah.
I had a different election for my relatives. And I said, I'm going to Eretz Yisrael. You're crazy. No, I'm not crazy.
Baruch Hashem. Pasuk Gimel, please look forward. Vayashkem Avraham Baboker. Avram, we know, has the actions of the great tzaddikim. By the way, I have in front of me a wonderful sefer called Sichot of Rosh Hashanah. One of the former great poskim that died about 25 years ago, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, one of the great giants of the generation, passed away 25 years ago. One of his main students is the rabbi of the Old City for the last 40 years.
Oh.
What is the name of the rabbi of the Old City? Rabbi Avigdor Nevinsal. Very much associated with the Hesder Yeshiva Yeshivat HaKotel. He's in his mid-80s. One of my, I shouldn't be going to say one of my colleagues, but one of my friends is much bigger than me that I studied from a little. He helped produce this sefer about 20 years ago from Rabbi Nevinsal. And therefore I'm using some of the comments that are here in front of me. Vayashkem Avram Baboker. He doesn't wait to be woken up. He gets up. right away, early.
Saddles the donkey himself.
He gets up really early. This is diligence. This is quickness. And of course, he saddles the donkey. You see that in verse 3. He could have said, Jimmy, would you please saddle up my donkey? He doesn't do it. He opens up the hood, checks the water, the oil, what else? The air pressure, what else do you tell me? And he immediately gets going. What does he take? Vaikachet shnei na'arav, 2 young lads. According to Chazal, who are the 2 youngsters? Ishmael and Yitzchak. No, and I think it's a mistake. It says Shnei Naravito ve'et Yitzchak beno. He's taking 3. 2 Ne'arim, which one is Yishmael, another lad, and he's taking Yitzchak. Now look what he does prior to departure. Look, so it could be Eliezer, according to Chazal. Look what he does prior to departure. Follow. Vayivaka atzei olah. He goes cutting atzei olah, wood for an olah offering. Okay, 1 second. Did we skipped the other part of the verse that says, and go raise up an olah offering. Take your son Yitzchak and raise him up as a olah offering. A type of offering called the korban olah. Why is it called olah?
Elevation.
It's elevated. It's completely or wholly, WHOOLY, burnt. It's completely elevated to God. No one gets a piece of the action in a olah offering. Is that clear? Now, he decides to cut wood here. Isn't that a schlep, what we call that in modern day English?
Yes, but he doesn't know if he'll be able to find wood there.
So number 1, he doesn't know if he's going to find wood there. In other words, extra caution and carefulness that even though he has a painful mitzvah to do, he wants to make sure he gets atzei olah. Now it doesn't say just any wood, but he looked for the premier, dry, wormless type of wood, which would be ideal for burning. It doesn't have to be cedar, but it's particularly good for halachically making sacrifices on an altar, meaning it's wood that hasn't decayed, wood that has not become a wormy, and so on and so forth. Okay, they're traveling. Do you remember where Avram is living ever since he departed from Lot? Hebron area. And now he's going to Mount Moriah, namely he's traveling which direction? North. Vayom HaShlishi, verse 4, on the 3rd day, Vayisavram et einav, he raises his eyes. Vayeira Makom Meir, and he sees the place from a distance. Later on in the Chumash, we notice that the town called Yerushalayim is never, ever mentioned. Rather, Hamakom, the place, capital T-H-E, capital A, right? The place is mentioned whenever the Torah reflects or refers to Yerushalayim. So he sees the place, Mei Rachok, from a distance. When you travel geographically from Hebron to Yerushalayim, the first place that you can visibly see the Temple Mount from the Tayelet. How do you say Tayelet in English? The what is it called? The walk, not the walkway. In Armona Netziv, under the commission, the UN Commissioner's station, there's a Tayelet, a place where you can hike. What is it called in English? Not a trail. Promenade? It's called promenade. What's a promenade? What is a promenade?
It's just a walking.
So there's a promenade before Talpiot, meaning Talpiot going north, and you stand there. Have you seen? I think we were on a teal there last year, Amalti, and it's breathtaking. You're looking directly at the Temple Mount, straight in front of you. You're on the eastern side of Yerushalayim. You're not far from Talpiot, which is the most southern neighborhood, more or less next to Gilo, and you're looking straight. So many Eretz Yisrael experts argue that you reach this place where the view is breathtaking. It's a valley underneath you. There's nothing blocking your view. And how does he know that he sees the place? How does he know?
Divine.
So first of all, the fact that he had to walk 3 days, when you walk 3 days, you think. God wants him to think.
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to be a sensational event that happens quickly. 1 hour and he's done. He's going to think about it one day, a second day, a third day. He has the chance to make a U-turn and go back, right? But he doesn't. He's thinking about it. In other words, Avram is not going to do this out of sudden shock, but he's going to bother, impose himself, walk, hike, and therefore 3 days he sees the place. He has prophetic vision to see this place. Mr. Avram said, and he remembers what Rashi says here, he saw something that told him that this is the place. He saw a cloud. Now give me a break. I also see clouds, and I'm not a prophet. I know my grandfather or great-grandfather was a prophet, but I'm not a prophet. So what kind of cloud? We're talking about that was blue skies out there. And the cloud was very unusual. And this cloud is hovering over apparently the place. Now, it's not just a cloud which you can define from a weather point of view, but it's some sort of prophetic sight. He's seeing something prophetically. He's visually something prophetically, and it appears to Avram because he sees it, whereas the others do not see it.
Except Yitzchak.
Some say Yitzchak, but it doesn't say that even here. Question, Malti?
Was it a cloud like when we were out of Israel?
There, it was a real cloud that covered ourselves and provided us shade, flattened out the mountains, flattened out the hills, killed the snakes and scorpions. So it was as if it was an object, and God said, make that sacred and remembered, and build tzchach and live in a sukkah for 7 days to remember that cloud. So I think it was something that was visual. And when we saw the cloud rising, we packed our Samsonite luggage. When we saw the cloud landing, we unpacked and we opened up camp. Vayomer Avram el Narav in verse 5, he says to his lads, Shavu lachem po, you sit here, ima chamor, with the donkey. What does this say? We have to know exactly where the donkey is going to be. Question. Vani vanar, and I and the lad, meaning Yitzchak, nelchad ko.
We'll go and come back.
V'nishtachava, and then we'll bow down. V'nashuv alechem, we'll come back. My dear friends, chamor, a donkey, has its root, the letters chet mem resh, chomer, material. Okay? If you've ever taken care of a donkey before in your life, I have. When my son wanted to take it as a pet, decided he doesn't have any more strength to take care of it, so I had to take care of the donkey while I was a stubborn mule. When I wanted to move him from one place to another place, he didn't want to move for the life of you. Chomer, material, matter, thickness, gross. The others are going to stay here with the chamor. They are on a similar material level. Our sages teach us like a chamor, meaning they don't have prophecy. Please don't misunderstand. These persons and the nations that come out of them later are not a bunch of donkeys. But as far as material versus spiritual, they represent the material side of the life, like the word a donkey. Therefore, that explains they didn't see the visual sight, that the prophet sight that he saw, and therefore they're not going to deserve to be at such a great spiritual episode that Avram will experience. Hey, let's sit tight. I'm going to go there, and now Avram says, as if he's making a promise, as if he's predicting the future, as if he doesn't know what he's saying. L'chora, Yitzchak is going to be sacrificed. But he uses anachnu, we will bow down and we will return. From there, our sages teaches us, be careful what you say, for the good and less good. The power of words that a Jew has, especially, as some of you know, can create holiness. If I decide to sanctify this eraser and it becomes sanctified, okay, I'll send you to the holy temple and you give it to the treasurer or the stock supplier, and they'll use it for holy matters on the Temple Mount. Why? Until a moment ago, this looked to me to be like a very regular eraser. And now that I sanctified, made it to Hegdesh, wow, I don't see anything happen in the change of the matter, but my words come from my heart and soul. They could create sanctity, can they not? I made Hegdesh. I made it holy. Avram Avinu said, we're going to come back. He created, by the usage of his words, A Brit. The Talmud says in Moed Katan, page 18, the Rav brings here, Brit Kruta Lasfatayim. There's a covenant made, established because of the lips, because of the word you said. Since he said, we're going to come back, then he's going to come back. The power of his speech. How it's going to happen, he has no understanding. Pasuk 6. Vaikach Avram et atzei ola. Apparently they've arrived. He takes off, takes the wood of the ola. Vayasem al Yitzchak beno. He places it on Yitzchak. Vaikach biado et ha'esh. He takes into his hand the fire. I don't understand. What do you mean he takes into his hand fire?
The container.
Was for the Korban not always uses fire that was continuous?
From what? How is he holding on to fire?
He pulled out a Zippo right there.
Clearly, this is a metaphysical moment.
It doesn't have to be. I think many times the term Aish is used in the Tanakh. It means coals of fire. Okay? What is on top of the altar? We have wood set up. Do we not have? We have establishments of wood. We burn it. It turns into charcoals, and that's what burns the pieces. So it doesn't have to be metaphysical. It has to really physically burn a korban. So it could be very well using coals.
Listman,
Yes, sir.
the coal, you can light it.
Very good.
Then you have to wave something to make it light and start activating.
That could be the source. No fire. It could be flintstone, right? It could be using a stone which is very flammable. It could be one of these solutions. No.
Yeah.
So he's holding the ish, and he has the machelet. He has the knife in his hand, and they're walking together. Vayilchu shnehem yachdav. Are you aware the age of Yitzchak according to our sages in this episode? 37. If I'm not mistaken. You asked yesterday, Ruvain, at the Rosh Hashiva, explain us please the partnership here between Avraham and his son Yitzchak. Vayilchu shnehem yachdav. If you look in this verse 6, I'm sorry. Right? You see that? And they're going together. They're partners. Vayilchu shnehem yachdav. Okay. We see it again in verse 8. Vayilchu shnehem yachdav. Yitzchak is not stupid. He's also not unaware. He is totally aware. And he's showing the complete partnership with his father, the willingness, the submission towards this divine ideal, vis-a-vis God's will. And therefore, they're going forward. It could be that Avram received the prophecy, but Yitzchak, and let's see if he understands that he is the object of the Korban. Okay? Because now, in verse 7, we're ready to go to verse 7. Vayomer Yitzchak el Avram Avi, he asked his father, Vayomer Avi, my dad, with honor, my dad. Vayomer Hine, I'm here, what do you want? B'ni. Vayomer Hine, I see, behold, the Eish, the fire, the Eitzim, the wood. Vayeh haseh le'olah. Vayeh haseh le'olah. Can you please tell me why Yitzchak Avinu, after 3 days of walking with his father, and they're carrying Flintstones maybe, wood, and he's there. Now, on day number 3, he asks the question. My dear friends, there are some that say that Yitzchak indeed understood what's exactly going on, and that he is the object, he is the Hegdesh, to be sanctified as a Korban for Olah. Now that the father's put upon him the wood for the Korban, Yitzchak has a question. Listen to this question. Anything that is Hegdesh, that is sanctified, you're not allowed to make use of it. You're not allowed to make usage of it. There's a prohibition, and there's a tractate called embezzlement, or in Hebrew, me'ilah. Okay? If I gave to Yoshua Fanda, and I dedicated this to the Beit HaMikdash, and while he's in the cab going to the Temple Mount, you have your whiteboard inside your cab, and you decide, well, I have to erase something, and you erase. I'm sure the treasurer of the Beit HaMikdash won't mind me using it once. He, by mistake, did the prohibition of embezzlement. What is embezzlement halachically? Making benefit out of a holy object, meaning a mundane. I meant to use the word mundane. That's called mi'ila, lim'ol. There's financial embezzlement and there's embezzlement of usage of Beit Mikdash matters. So there are those that ask the question. That was his question. Now he's asking, if I'm the purpose of the Quran, how can you be using me and putting wood on top of me? Or some that ask the question, the Malbim brings that question. And there's an answer right now. You're not yet Hegdesh. You'll be Hegdesh in a moment. In any event, there's certainly a simple meaning that he's thinking that maybe there's an additional korban or together with him or maybe instead of him. And Yitzchak, does he rely on God? Does he rely on this divine commandment? Look what Avram answers him. Vayomer Avram, Elokim Yirelo Haseh Le'ola Beni. God, Avram doesn't know exactly what the plan is. And he's hoping and praying, and he doesn't know how they're going to come together. But God's going to show you. God's going to show the seh for the Ola Beni. Yet they continue to walk together a second time. Le'ola Beni. Put those two words together. Le'ola, for the sake of a Ola offering. Who?
Me.
Beni.
My son.
It's clearly telling him that you are the Ola. You're in the future going to be this burning offering. Now, this is quite a clear hint. But in spite of the fact that Yitzchak hears or understands this hint, he still had difficulty understanding it, as the Midrash says. Yet, they're going together. Second time. Vayelchu shnehem yachdav. The Midrash says they're going together with happiness. They have no regret, no restraint, no lack of trust or belief. They're wholesomely believing in God that this is what has to be done. And they're going together, wholesomely. Pasuk 9. Vayivor lamakom, and they come to the place. Asher amar lelokim, that God said. Vayiven sham Avram et hamizbeach. He's a builder. He's built altars before in Shechem, Elon Moreh, in Beitel. And now he's building again an altar. Vaya'aroch et ha'itzim. He's very organized. He establishes, in an orderly fashion, places the wood. And then, Vaya'akod et Yitzchak beno. Can I ask you a question? If you're with your dad, and your dad starts building an altar, and you're alongside him, what do? You help him.
Mm-hmm.
What is not done here?
Yitzchak helping him?
Doesn't say Yitzchak's helping him. Amazing question.
Is he protesting about him being sacrificed?
Do you think that he's on that level?
Now
He was on the level instead of jumping on the altar.
Gentlemen, so there are those that ask the question that he's not helping out build this. Chazal deal with this question.
Or it doesn't say he's helping out.
It doesn't say, but it says that Avram's building. Let me say something. When my kids are home and it's time to wash the floors for Shabbos, you know what they say to me?
What?
Abba, go rest in the room. Go learn Torah. We'll take care of this. They don't want me to do anything. Because they also think I don't do a good job also. That's another reason. But what do you think the answer, Yitzchak not helping the father build him himself?
Maybe I have two ideas.
No, keep it off.
What we said before with the wood, the hektiv is now applicable. Or for another, say, the mitzvah is on Avram, not on Yitzchak.
Wow.
And that is the reason why Avram built it alone. Maybe.
Okay. Amazing. If you were my wife, I'd give you a kiss, but not in front of everyone. Two answers. One is what you said. That's the simple answer. Since Avram is commanded to do it, the greater mitzvah is to do it yourself and not via an assistant, a shaliach. But Chazal say that if Yitzchak went into the building right now, into the construction right now, he might injure, scratch himself,
And he wouldn't be.
and then he would be not
Disqualified.
He would be disqualified from a korban, because we learn later in the Chumash of Korbanot, the book of Vayeira, the book of Leviticus, what is legible, what is suitable for a korban, something which is tamim, whole, complete, without amum, without blemish. So maybe Yitzchak purposely does not help in the building process in order not to make himself, God forbid, amum.
In fact, there is a midrash that says he told his father, tie me well, so that I won't be blameless.
Okay, that's right. Yes?
Can I backtrack
Yes.
to verse 7?
Yes.
It bothers me that they've been walking for 3 days. Then Abraham and Yitzhak leave. They're walking together, and then it says Yitzhak spoke to Abraham, his father, and of course he would know where his father is, but Abraham says, "Here I am."
You're asking why is the response
Here I am.
Hineni in Zion and Chet 7 and 8? I mean, they're walking alongside. I think it's an expression to his son of love. Whatever you need, I'm with you. I'm with you. Whatever you need. Hineni. You need something? I'm to your aid.
Can you pass me
And
juice?
furthermore, I think it proves by saying b'ni, affection. It's love. He calls them my son.
Something.
So it's not that, oh, here I am, and that he didn't know where he is, but rather, Avram is showing his son, I'm with you, my son. I love you. I'm ready for you, whatever you need. I think it's an expression that I'm with you.
That makes sense. So Abraham is not.
It's not, I'm ready for you. It's like, no, to God, here I am. But it's similar. I'm ready for any mission you need.
It's interesting. It's almost like he's telling his son he's present.
Yes, but the presence here means I'm with you. I love you. It says, B'ni, I love you, my son. I give you affection.
If you're about to, follow through with what you're commanded to do, it's almost as if the natural reaction would be to detach yourself emotionally from the situation. But in this case,
he is showing his emotional love to his son in spite of the intellectual need only. That's correct. That's correct.
Right.
I want to end today's learning here with ourselves.
All right.
With the words of Rav Kook. If you permit, again, I'm holding up a sefer called Olat Riyah. Olah is the word that Yitzchak is to be. The name of his siddur, written by his students, put out by his students, is called Olat Riyah, the burnt offering, the elevated offering of Riyah. Rav Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen. Reish Aleph Yud Hey is Rav Avraham Yitzchak HaKohen. And like I said, it's very deep, very broad. One page is like two phrases or something like that. It's very deep. It has to be learned. I'm saying to myself, okay. When God appears through the angel at the end of this trial, and God says, Ki ata yadati, and now I know, okay, towards the end, now I know, Ki yirei Elokim ata, that you're a fear of God. V'lo chesachta, you didn't save your son, you're only one for me. Here, Avram has reached the highest level, the highest purity level and clarity level that is so cleansed that there's no whatsoever piece of pollution, of negativity, both bodily and spiritually in Avraham's soul. He's so pure and holy in his belief that even his love for God that he's showing here, his love that is so part of his nefesh and so part of the very essence of Avraham Avinu, even though we are limited, we're human beings, and we don't have unlimited love, it's as if it has been scorned with fire. His fear is like fire that's always going up, is always tending to rise. The fear of Avram is a growing fear that's above any other love or emotion that we've seen. Only in the highest levels of intelligence and awareness of purity and strength. That's what Avram is showing here. And by doing so, he's showing that a human soul, a human being who has this soul, we can aspire to be like Avram. We also can complete ourselves. We can also go forward with more levels of love, with higher levels of fear. Right now, it's as if it's been ordained in the knowledge of God how far a member of mankind that loves God so much, how far he can arrive to. Ki ata yadati, now I know. Ki yarei Elokim ata, that you're a fear of God. Avram Avinu, we know that his main attribute, of course, is love. Like Isaiah says, you are the seed of Avram, my lover. That's what Isaiah said. We saw that 2 weeks ago. But not only that does he love, we all know that we all have to build an equilibrium in our life. We all need a balance in our life upon serving Hashem. We know that God's wisdom, his system of Torah, compiled of positive mitzvot as well as negative mitzvot. So we have green lights and we have red lights. All the green lights, the positive things that we are to take upon ourselves to do, will help us emulate the true love of God. Yet there's a red line. We have to know where to stop. We have to know where the borders are. These prohibitions of the Torah, the 365 negative commandments, the mitzvot lo ta'aseh, they are building inside our nefesh, by us adhering to them, fear, distance, stay away, don't do. We have to build this pure balance, this godly balance of love and fear. If someone just loves and loves and loves, he's not going to know where to stop. He may just do the wrong things with the wrong people. We need the sense of fear. But at the same time, if we just have fear, it's going to prevent us from taking action, initiative, performing mitzvot. We're going to be nervous. Am I violating this? Am I violating that? We have to be natural, pure.
That's why we have Yaakov Avinu. It has
All the fears. But here, that's right, beautiful. But here you agree, Avram, that this complete love and this complete appearance of Avram Avinu is now purified by the light of pure fear. Okay? The love that he has for his son is not lacking whatsoever. You didn't prevent from your son, your special son. You gave him all your love. Okay? You came to the most supreme level of love. Even when en route to you called him Bini, my son, affection, love. He's coming to such a hard point. Your love for your son is enrooted out so much and is so strong that it's together with your love of God. The one that's giving you life. The Elokim who is emet. And you know how to blend your love and fear here at the same time. May we also continue to learn about Avram Avinu and his attributes, about his actions, what he does and what he doesn't do, and how he talks and what he doesn't talk. And may we be able to take all these matters and study them, and then be able to have these attributes permeate our inner being so that we can aspire to be like Avram Avinu. Have a good day today, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
You want to hit the phone? Have a good day and Shabbat Shalom to you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Shalom be well. In the back. Or not.
Does anybody know this stuff?
So,
You gotta cut this?
what was going on at that
No,
moment
that's not how you do
when
it.
the angel halted?
First, you know how to do this? You know how to
Test-
do this?
test with fine colors.
It's
He was ready to do it.
Moshe job. It's not
Can
me.
you find Moshe then?
Sure, you know how to cut the
Am I his mommy? No.
you know how to cut this, I'm saying.
Okay, that's
What's going on? That seems to be